The year is done, and so are we. I'm just kidding. Welcome to Tabletop Shop.
Hello and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop Podcast. Between a review of the monolithic Barrage and a top 10 list, this episode may run a little longer. So settle in with your hot cocoa and whatever board game you like to hold to feel safe and comfortable. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nate Clark, and as always, seated across the country from me is your other co-host, Mr. Cody Pennington.
Who is currently wondering, Nate, what do you think is the most common hot beverage that people are holding while they are listening to this podcast?
Definitely coffee. I would say,
coffee?
Bar none, coffee is the most popular hot beverage anyways.
Yeah, it's kind of true. Although, across the world, it's tea. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, definitely
tea
across the
coffee.
world, yes.
So, do we have a global audience?
Define, do we have a global audience? Like, I know we have people outside the U.S. that listen, but
Sure.
I would say predominantly, no.
Well, I tried. So I guess it's coffee.
Actually,
that's fine. Like, coffee's good, but I also like tea.
you like tea more than coffee. You're one of those people, right?
Well, not exactly. See, if I go to a coffee shop, I'm not going to order tea. I'm going to get coffee.
Well,
because I
but
like
that's
coffee.
be-
But
that's
at home, I drink tea more frequently.
Well, that's also because you have high tea standards and you own a lot of tea. So, like, drinking
It's
tea when
true.
you go out has a much greater chance of being an underwhelming experience.
Yeah, but it's like coffee just it also tastes better. I don't know. It just depends on the
Does taste better.
circumstance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cody,
So anyway, did you have like a question for me or something?
I do. So, when I was thinking about this question, my first prerequisite, no, that's not the right word. My first caveat was that you could not answer wingspan. And then I realized, you can't answer scythe either. And then I kind of just decided, you know what, you just can't, the answer to this question cannot be any Stonemaier game, all right?
All right, it's gone. Perfect.
What is a game that you feel like you have mastered, yet you still like bringing it back to the table? Because a lot of times there's this thing, right, where it's like once you master a game, maybe you start to lose interest in it and you want to move on. So what's something, not Stonemaier, that you feel like you've mastered, or maybe you don't have to, maybe not objectively mastered, but you've played it a lot and you're very good at it, but you still like playing it.
Sure. I still like playing it. It's a good question, man. Throwing out Stonemaier is kind of cruel.
The thing is,
Because
I know
now I
you've played
can't say-
hundreds of games of Wingspan and Scythe, if not thousands.
I played a lot of games of Tapestry too. Definitely not hundreds, but because of BGA Premium, which I had for a while, I was playing a lot of Tapestry games.
Mm-hmm.
Although they don't really incorporate the expansions much at all. This might be a moderately cheap answer, but I might come at you with the Quacks of Quedlinburg. Because I feel like this is a hard game to master, necessarily. Like, you can try combos, but it still is very much luck-based. Obviously, push your luck. But I still love pulling it out. And if that's too cheap of an answer, I'll say Brass Birmingham. Not that I have mastered the game at all, but Kirsten and I have certainly stepped up our game after learning a few techniques. But we still like pulling it out.
I would say Quacks is
there you
definitely
go.
a valid answer because, there's too much luck that you cannot master it. But I feel like you can reach a point where you're not, like, learning new things or exploring new strategic depths, right?
Sure. Do you guys own Quacks at this point?
Yes. No expansions, but
Did
yes.
that happen recently?
Over the summer, I think. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. But no expansions. Interesting. Herb Witches is a good expansion.
It is good. Yeah.
Well, so this has been some good banter, some good catching up. It's all very exciting. Hey, Happy New Year, everyone. Unless you're
That's
watching this sometime other than immediately when this comes out, in which case just happy whatever time it is in your zone.
Happy whatever day you're in, every day should be a happy day.
Super cool. And here's the thing, Nate. Because it is the end of the year, this is not the segment we're about to do, but the segment after the segment we're about to do will be our top 10 games of 2024 per tradition. And Nate, was it last episode or last time we did this type of episode, did we come up with all of our end of year stats? Because I forgot to do that this time.
I did not do that this time. And I think that was an episode unto itself, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
It was like a banter section of an episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe if we feel like doing that at some point, we can do that.
Actually, that will be the segment after the upcoming segment, because Cody, would you like to showcase a game?
Oh, that's right. We can pick one game.
You can also decline. You're not obligated to do this.
Here's the thing, dude. It's been so long, I feel like, since we've done a podcast episode where I've had a new play that I was actually like excited to talk about that I didn't even give this any thought. So let me have a look at the games
I will go first. I'll go
most
first.
recently. Yeah, do it.
It's been a little while since I played this now because it's been so long since we recorded, but a little game that I borrowed from a friend and Anna and I played probably 7 or 8 times is called Dice Miner, which is a fantastic little Yahtzee style, but also Seven Wonders duel style game. It's literally just dice and this little slanted board that you roll the dice into, so they create a little pyramid, right? They create a little mountain. And then you draft Seven Wonders duel style, where you can only draft from the peaks, right? So you can only draft the dice that have no dice on top of them. And so it's got that Seven Wonders style dual drafting, and then just some cool scoring stuff going on too. And then there's 3 rounds. In between each round, you're accumulating more and more dice, and some of the dice play off of each other. There's different scoring objectives that you're trying to accomplish with them. Very light game, but very quick game. I mean, virtually no setup, right? And probably plays in like 15 to 20 minutes with any number of players because it's the same amount of dice. So we really enjoyed it. We played it like 7 or 8 times, and I was very surprised. You know, I think it was a Kickstarter back in the day. Probably you can still find a copy, but yeah, definitely enjoyed it. So Dice Miner is my showcase.
Yeah, you sent me a picture of this a while ago when you first played it, and it looked pretty fun. But didn't you say it's kind of like maybe doesn't have a whole bunch of replayability?
I mean, kind of. Maybe I said that, but like I said, I mean, we played it 7 or 8 times. It plays so fast that maybe I would, if I did say that, maybe I would be a little bit hesitant. I guess what I would say is that it is very light, and there is a fair bit of luck, so I could see that a lot of people don't get very much enjoyment out of it or get bored with it very quickly. But that did not happen for us. So,
Okay. All right. I might have to give this a try. Maybe you should bring it sometime when you journey across the United States once more.
As I do, infrequently.
Yes. Very free. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to come at you with a game that you also played, but apparently it did not meet your desire to bring up. And that is, I'm really not sure if it's Brussels or Bruxelles 1897.
I'm going to go with Bruxelles.
Nah, that's dumb, dude. It's Bruxelles. Bruxelles 1897.
Yeah, that's not dumb.
Yeah, not at all. This was an interesting little game. So I'm aware that this is a derivative of Brussels 1893, I believe, which is like a big, I was going to say newfangled. It's not newfangled. Is just fangled a word? Old fangled? It's a fangled large game. That I guess they adapted into a card game version. I just happened to see this was like on sale for Black Friday on Amazon. It was like $10. I'm like,
yeah.
You know what? That looks fun.
I think a lot of people nabbed it.
Oh, you think so? Is there going to be a new Brussels crowd?
Maybe a Brussels sprout.
Shut up. Anyway, and I decently enjoyed the game. So it's not exactly a drafting game. There is a drafting component where there is a grid of cards laid out, not even on the board, just in the center of the table. In order to take one of the cards there, you have to swap it with one of your worker cards. And these worker cards have values anywhere from 1 to 5, and you have to pay the value of the card to play it down. So it's kind of a cool system where you're dictating how strong you want your worker to be. And then as everyone's replacing the cards in the center with their own cards. And so you're getting columns of cards that belong to multiple people. So it turns into this column scoring majority thing where the people who got the highest power of workers collectively in a single column gets a little bonus. And then wherever There's like quadrants where 4 cards meet in the center. If that gets completed, whoever had the most cards making that up also gets a majority. So there's multiple majority systems that you're playing with in here. And then besides that, every card you take gives you one of like 5 basic actions. You can either take art, or then you can flip art and sell it for money. Art can also be used to do an exhibition, which gets you some points. And then there's kind of a parallel system where you can take construction materials, or you can use those materials to build buildings. So it's all like fairly simple. It's not a overly extravagant or crazily intricate game. But it has a few unique systems that it used, so I kind of liked how it all came together. This didn't end up falling mega high in my top 100 list, but I'm not going to get rid of the game. And yeah, I enjoyed it.
It's funky. It's definitely funky. It's kind of like
very funky.
Set collection adjacent, because there are some set collection aspects, but then other things you collect just so that you can turn around and like get rid of them later. And then it's also got area control, kind of like 2 different flavors of area control happening at the same time, and all of this just with a deck of cards, right? So it's interesting. Yeah.
It's cool how it can break down just into one very diverse set of cards in a little box. Yeah. I do like that. Yeah. That's all I got.
That's all you got. Good pick, Cody. Glad you had something to talk about. Let's move on to our game of the week.
Hit it!
Cody, the floor is yours. And
thank you.
By the way, try and do it briefly, I guess. I mean, good luck, but
okay, sure.
Maybe don't get into the nitty-gritty too much.
I'll tell you what. I'll get more into the nitty-gritty when I talk about my likes and dislikes.
Let's do that.
So, our game of the week is Barrage. This is a game that I played for the first time, I think 2 years ago, and this scored quite highly on my new plays at the time. I don't remember if this was like a number 1 or number 2 for like new games I played in like 2023 or something. And I've been wanting Nate to play it for a long time, and he and Anna were finally over for a little Christmas party, and we finally played it. So, Barrage, the long-anticipated game review that's finally brought to you live by Tabletop Shop. Live as it is right now. It's going to be recorded.
Live
from
us.
The forest. Yeah. So, Barrage is a very unique, different sort of game that combines multiple unique aspects to make this big, grand, crazy system. So one of the main things is that this is a directional networking game. So water flows as a resource onto the board only from one direction and then cascades down in a pattern. And you can build along that pattern. You can build dams and you can level up those dams to catch the water and use conduits to divert it away along different paths. That's the basic main idea. Is you're trying to tap this resource and steal it from other people as much as you can. And then obviously use that well. The other aspect of this is as you tap that resource, you can generate energy with it. Depending on how much energy you can generate on one turn, which is hard to produce a lot of energy. It can become easier as the game progresses, as you get bigger dams and you can access more water all at once. But you turn that energy into contracts that you can complete. There's some big public contracts, and then there's other contracts that you can just buy and then fulfill personally in your own time. And the game has different objectives that you're also trying to meet like every round. And those objectives become harder and harder to complete because there's like a penalty to it according to which round it is. And so you have to keep up and produce more and more energy to keep up with those objectives. That's the basic idea. There's a lot of other things going on, but in spirit of keeping this short and simple and us getting to our likes and dislikes, that's the basic concept. Nate, did I leave out anything drastically important?
I would say nothing too major. No.
All right. Okay. All right. Cool beans. Let's get into our likes. Who's going to start?
I'll start. Kind of my first point is kind of sums up what you've been saying, but it's just that it is perplexingly novel, right?
Yes.
It's just because it's networking, but there's the board element of the water flowing, and you can redirect it. And if you're really good at the game, you can redirect it to yourself. If you're playing the game for the first time, you're still figuring out the nuances of how the water moves and how it interacts, and the level of dam you have, how much water that will hold, and then it overflows, and all of a sudden, you just sent water here, and you didn't realize that you're actually benefiting the person, all the way down the board from you because of how the water is going to move. And it's incredibly interactive, with where everyone's building their dams and their generators and their, turbines or whatever. And just, I mean, so much like mastering this game is really mastering water, right? The flow of water, right? Mm-hmm. And it's definitely complex and also definitely very dependent on what other people are doing. You're always reacting to how other people are building. So very interesting system.
Yeah. Yes, I'll jump on that. And I really like the resource recycling system about all this. So resources are really scarce, both the water that you can tap to use to produce energy, but then also it's called the machineries. This is just the basic resource you use to get things out on the map. It's really hard to get any of those, and you need a lot of them to build anything in the game. What it all comes down to is you use a little bit at a time, and then you have this construction wheel to where once you use some workers, or not workers, you do have workers, but those just go on the board. You get it back every time. You use some of your resources and a little like a construction tile thing. You put that in your construction wheel, and then it rotates. And eventually that will rotate back, and then those resources will become available for you to use again. So it's more like equipment that you're using that just gets occupied for a bit, as opposed to something like you're spending permanently. So you really have to learn how to use that well if you want to accomplish anything, as well as using the water that comes down from the head streams. Because if you don't use that water, you lose it. Like there's only a limited amount of water that's going to show up over the course of the entire game. And well, I guess there's some actions where you can add some water personally, but those are still limited. So yeah, I love the recycling mechanic.
But also very important, being able to add water to the board can generate quite a lot of points for you, or power, I guess I should say.
Oh yeah. So,
if
you do it right.
Yeah. That's the caveat to everything in this game, right? For example, the resource wheel is kind of a neutral point for me. I think it's a great idea and it's fascinating, but also I found it to be, maybe I'm just not good enough at the game, but I found it to be a little too slow, frustratingly slow, right? Where it's like you kind of have to go take this action on the board that speeds it up, which feels like you shouldn't. It feels like a suboptimal play every time you do that, and maybe it's not. Maybe that's part of the strategy, but it kind of feels like it. So, yeah, I didn't love that, but but at the same time I do, because it's fascinating. One thing I really like are how you can use credits. So you have, just like a money resource, right? Which is a standard, you accrue it and you can spend it. I really like that you can either use it for actions, like there are certain actions that you have to pay money to do, for example, spinning the wheel, or you can use it to take stronger versions of actions, essentially. Basically, there's like, for example, if you're going to generate power, you want to take the first spot for generating power because it only costs 2 workers and it's a free spot to go. And it generates extra power. Well, if somebody took that and you want to also generate, 2 extra power, there's another spot you can go that lets you do that, but you have to pay money and an extra worker, right? So I like that money can be used as its own thing, or it can be used to make sure you do what you want to do on different actions. So I like that it has 2 very distinct uses.
Yeah, I like that too. And money is also hard to get. Everything in this game is hard to get, so you have to be careful what you use the money on. Yeah, it is cool how it functions like that. I'll jump on and I'll say that I like the worker system as well. So you start the game, you don't acquire any additional workers over the course of the game. You always have the same number, and I think it's like 15 maybe. But some worker places require a single worker, and some require 3. And even on your own player board, you have some personal action spaces that you use to build, and those increase. So your first building of the round cost 1 worker, then the second one is 2, and then 3. Mm-hmm. So yeah. It is something of a novel take on how you employ workers to do things. I like that too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have to say I really love the look. The production value, for starters, is fantastic. The look of the game is very good. I enjoy the player colors because the board is so drab, right? But aesthetically so, kind of like Brass Birmingham. It's very dark and moody and aesthetic. And then the player colors are like pink and bright blue and maybe black also. But like there is some splashes of colors there that, make things look a little bit nicer. And yeah, just the art is great. The mood is fantastic. It's a very, very good production.
Yes, much agreed. I love the vibe too. And I mean, that's one of the main things that probably first put me onto the game is when you see the box cover of this and it's just like a very dark, moody, almost like a lightning storm or rainstorm going on. And there's just this big menacing, it's like a dam or a tower in the background. And then you got some like crackling purple electricity. It's very good. I looked this up because I was like, well, it's not exactly steampunk. I know diesel punk is a thing.
It's 1920s plus, Cody.
It is, but I learned a thing. This is called Tesla punk.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Is when it's like electricity powered everything. And so I thought that was cool. Because Scythe is definitely also has a lot of Tesla punk.
Yeah, for sure.
Aspects to it. It has some diesel punk too, but yeah, it's a cool vibe.
Yeah, no, I love it. Especially once you get into with talking about Scythe, especially no spoilers, but once you get into Rise of Fenris, it really leans into the Tesla punk vibe.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a little bit more subtle in this one, but it's definitely still there, and I like it.
Yeah. Do you have any further likes? I do have one final one.
Last thing I want to mention was just like, more as in summation, this is a game that I know is both a fantastic design, but also a very punishing game because by the end of the game, I mean, it's got this typical thing, right, where you've got your player board with your different buildings that you can buy. And, of course, you're not going to get all of them out, right? Like most Euros. I think I maybe got half of them out. I feel like the typical Euro is like...
Barely.
Yeah, I feel like the typical Euro, you're getting like 3/4, maybe even more of those buildings out or whatever. And this game, it was like, half or less. So I was like, A, obviously I'm not very good at the game yet. And B, I respect the design for that purpose. There's a lot of room for growth here. So...
Yeah, for sure. This is a punishing game. It is very difficult to get things out on the board. That's almost, mind you, a dislike for me. The fact that you have all these abilities you can unlock on your player board.
Yeah.
And yet you'll maybe get half of them out over the course of the game.
Well, like I said, I think it comes with experience too, that you'll figure out how to be more efficient with your resources and build more things. But like, for example,
Sure.
I don't know if I ever talked about it, but I played Brazil Imperial a while ago. And it's all, same thing. It's got a player board with a bunch of buildings, whatever. First time I played the game, I think I got built almost all of the buildings on my board. And I was like, why would I play this again? Like it was an okay game, but it's like, I feel like I accomplished everything in the game. There's nothing that's like, ooh, next time I'm going to try and do this more. It's like, I feel like I did everything almost completely, so.
Yeah. So a bit of a refreshing counter.
It's like almost refreshingly punishing in a way.
You don't hear that very often. Yeah. My final thing is I did like the production. Nate kind of already talked about the aesthetic of it and how it looks, and which I definitely agree with. But it also has some pretty nice double boards for the players. And it has a bunch of boards too. So there's the big main board. There's kind of this energy track board above it. There's the worker placement board. There's like another little supplemental thing. Then all the pieces are cool. So every player has like 4 dams, I think. And then you have 4 additions you can put on top of the dams. And there's like 5 of the, what do you call them? Router things. Nate, I'm blanking.
Oh,
conduits. That's the thing. Yeah. Anyway, but each of those for each player looks a little bit different. I think the dams in particular are the most unique looking ones. Oh, then there's the power stations too. But it's cool how they had all those be different colors and different shapes and everything.
Yeah.
And the wooden pieces, all of it looks very dope.
Yes, no plastic in this game, to my knowledge, and I am very happy about that.
Oh. But that does bring us to our dislikes. Nate, I'm going to start us with our dislikes, if that's cool to you. I do not think this game scaled well to 4 players. So I played this at least twice with just Kirsten and I. And granted, there is some downsides to that because there's a lot more space on the board. Like the board isn't any smaller. And this being like a competitive networking game, you want to have friction between people. And certainly you could still mess with someone in a 2-player game, but there's enough space where each person can just kind of do their own thing and hide on one side of the board. But playing with 4 players, the amount of water that comes across the board does not increase. And so what I notice is that in a 2-player game, you can do all sorts of things. You can keep up with those objectives that increase with how much power you have to produce every single round. But then in a 4-player game, it was so difficult. Like, it felt like there was barely any water to go around. It felt almost impossible to like get any sort of large production. So probably 3 players is going to be the sweet spot for this. I'm not really sure if I enjoyed it more at 4 or 2. Probably still more at 2, I think. But yeah, you're going to want to do this with 3.
So coming off of that, I mean, I've only played a 4-player game, so I don't have the experience, the relevant experience to comment on, how it is at 2. My hunch is that in typical Euro fashion, this is probably a best experience at 3 players. And part of the problem, and I know you feel the same way, at least I'm fairly certain you do, but very, very much linked to what you're saying, these scoring goals were extremely frustrating in a 4-player game because it's a lot harder to, basically there's a track and each round you're going to score a different goal. But the way you score it is by producing enough energy on a track to, make it to that goal, to even be allowed to score it, right? And so each round you have to go further, you have to produce more energy and go further on that track to score the next goal. And so since you're like what you're saying, there's not a whole lot of water to go around, and water is how you produce energy and move on that track. It makes it a lot harder to move on the track naturally. And so, there would be like for the first round of the game, I was like, oh, okay, I'm really focusing on this first goal. I think I built at least 2 of the required buildings, so I was going to score like 10 points, and I fell 1 energy short. And so I scored 0 points instead of 10, which is a lot. Like, well, the high score was like 80-something. Like, the winning score was like 80-something. So it's like, I just missed out on 10 points because I was 1 short on that track. And then later on, it's like, oh, I produced a ton of energy this round, but the scoring goal is not something that I've been, working towards. And so I don't benefit from it at all, right? Or maybe I moved halfway up the track and, I score it, but I lose -4 points for every section I'm behind, so it equals out and I'm back to 0. It's just really, really punishing. Again, I've only played the game once, so I'm not great at it. I'm sure the more you play, it's easier to plan ahead and, do a better job building and reaching those goals. But also, I think 4 feels really tight and punishing, so.
Yeah. Which I feel like could maybe be fixed a little bit if you just have some sort of house rule, like the head streams, just add 1 extra water every round or every other round, something so there's a little bit more to go around, then you can do a bit more.
Well, I felt like later in the game, like in the last round, it wasn't too bad because there were so many buildings on the board. It's like as soon as water was processed one way, it was caught by another dam somewhere else and someone else could use it. Mm-hmm. But in the first couple rounds of the game, there's just not enough buildings on the board, even with those neutral dams. And so, most of the water is still just flowing right off the board after it gets used once.
Yeah. And then it's sad when you just lose the water. You're like, no.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'll also come at you with I didn't like the divisions of the coins and the resources. They had 1s, 3s, and 5s. And the 1s and 3s were just these like tiny little pieces. So it might have been better if they're a little bit bigger. Like they were trying to do these interesting little shapes to make them look like mechs. But it was just kind of annoying. Like the 3s and the 5s look kind of similar because they're about the same color. The 1s are a little bit lighter, I think. It would be better if you just had like 1s and 3s or 1s and 5s. And the same for the coin. Yeah. And the coin is also like the only part of the production that seemed a little bit cheapo to me. It was like cardboard tokens, but kind of the thin, like
the Hadara ones.
What is that? yeah, they were like Castles of Burgundy, kind of like some of the older style, like Euro-ys, like yeah. So that's kind of one complaint for me. Not a huge thing, but it does kind of, it messes a little bit with your experience.
The only final complaint for me is just, it's almost a half complaint because it's in typical, as I feel like with a lot of heavy Euros, there are certain things that come with it. It's really long, right? The 4-player game, we kind of had we had like a lunch break in between, but I think playtime was probably close to 4 hours, which is a lot. We had a similar experience with Anachrony. It was like 4 or 5 hours with Anachrony. So it's very long. The setup and takedown is kind of rough, and the learning curve is very steep, right? So those are all things that just come with a heavy Euro, so take it or leave it. But you're getting into that, right? So it's not like it blindsides you, like something like Root might or whatever.
Yeah, this is definitely something of a lifestyle game. Like you have to know what you're doing to really enjoy it. And I kind of have to relearn it every time I play it. And I played it like 3 or 4 times now. And granted, that's been spread across probably 2 years, but still, like there's a lot of little rules. Like, wait, so I can use this, but it has to be like I can use my dams and neutral dams, but then it can be anyone's conduit, but then it has to be my powerhouse, and you have to remember all these things.
It's like,
but that's okay.
It's more, the networking is more complicated than Brass Birmingham, for example.
Yeah. I mean, well, because Brass I have problems with too. There's some specific rules I always forget, so I do have to relearn with Brass. I'd probably say they're maybe comparable, but yeah. My final complaint is each person has a player power that is a part of your...
dude, this is why I lost 10 points. I know where you're going with this.
You have this little card that comes attached like next to your board. Like, this is your player power. This is the cool thing that you get to do. And it adds some asymmetry to the game. Like each board has some asymmetry in the things you can unlock as you progress for like your income and whatnot. But it kind of comes down to this ability. That ability you only get, though, once you've built 3 specific things off of your board, which is hard to do. It's hard to get that many things off. And it's like, I know it's in the rules, but I swear every time I play this game, I always forget that you don't have that ability starting off with. It looks like you should. It's set up where you should. Any other game like this, like you'd have that ability. But nope, you don't get it until you get 3 spots in. And yeah, it stole 10 points from Nate.
Yeah, I'm like, if you had just realized, because you realized that right before we scored the first round too. If you had just realized it like 10,
great time to
like
do it.
5 minutes later, I would have won the game because I think I was less than 10 points behind the leader. Yeah. Anyways, in summation, the idea of this game captivates me. I think it's very fascinating. It's very unique. Just comparing this to Carnegie. Because they were both new, very heavy, kind of obtuse games I played this year. This is one that like I'm itching to come back to, whereas Carnegie, I was kind of like, yeah, it's interesting. I'd like to try it again. We did play it again on BGA. I still think it's fine. But Barrage, I'm much more like, oh, this was good. My one caveat is I want to try it at 3 players. I would not ever play it at 4 again for all the reasons we've mentioned. I'm sure it's okay at 2, but I wonder if it might feel a little too easy now at 2 players and not like interactive enough. So I think 3 is definitely the sweet spot.
And there are expansions for this, including one that adds space for a 5th player. So I'm wondering if you add the 5th player expansion, but then you just do 4 players. Like maybe that helps balance it out.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Also, this is an expensive game. It's oh, you know what? I'm looking at Board Game Oracle. It's out of stock everywhere, so it must not be in print. Maybe it'll come back in. But yeah, the lowest price for when it was in stock was $72. So it's a bit of a big old game.
I want to say last year, like maybe it came to GameFound or Kickstarter again with like a new all-in deluxe kind of a situation.
It's called the Legendary Box. I'm looking at it right. Oh no, it's an expansion. Never mind. Dang it. Anyway, that is Barrage, ladies and gentlemen.
That is
which means
Barrage.
It's time, Nate, for our top 10 games of 2024. Not top 10 games that came out in 2024. We always have to specify this and clarify. These are the top 10 new games that we personally have played in 2024. So these are our top picks.
We both like board games. We do not play nearly enough board games to have a top 10. I've probably played a few games that came out in 2024.
I don't know if I had anything that came out in 20... Oh, okay. I have one that's listed as 2024. And another one that's also listed as 2024. But I tell you, I played that
6 years ago.
Yeah. It's dumb. But anyway, who's going to start this off? Should we roll a D20?
You know what? Let's do that.
7.
1.
I feel like getting a nat 1 should give you the honor of going first, but that's all right.
That makes no sense.
I'll hit us off. It means you get to go very, very last. So you get to present the final game of the list.
I see.
So, my number 10 of top 10 games played in 2024 is a game that I saw multiple times. It had a big craze around it like about a year ago. And then every time I pulled up a picture of it, I'm like, this game looks really dumb. I'm not interested. There's all these cards and they just have colors and numbers. Like what could be interesting about a game that just has colored number cards?
Do tell.
Like Uno? I'm not going to play a game like Uno. Like, that's dumb. And this is currently rank 100, so I keep seeing that.
It's in the top 100, man. Wow.
Yeah, man. And so finally, I did not buy it, but Nate brought it over, and so we played it.
I had to force feed it to you.
Yeah, but it was okay. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it so much I ended up getting a copy myself, and then I took it on a trip, and I taught it to a few other people, and I'm going to keep it. This is the game of Scout. Scout, a game with absolutely no theme. It has a claimed theme, but just ignore that. It's dumb. It makes no sense. I don't know. It's like, who cares? That's part of why I got confused. Like, it looks like a circus game according to the cover, and then you look at it, it's like, well, it's just a bunch of cards. So sure, it's some sort of weird pseudo circus game, but this is it's not a trick-taking game. You told me what this was called, Nate. It's like a trick development game or something, or
I believe it's called ladder climbing. And it could also be like ladder climbing is like where you have to one up the previous play. And also as a more generalization, it's just card shedding, right? Like you're trying to get rid of your hand.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, but the main catch with this is that you draw a hand of cards. I forget how many you start off with. It may depend on the number of players. But that hand of cards, all the numbers they have 2 numbers on them. If you hold them upside one way, it might be a 7. If you flip it over, it might be a 10. And it goes anywhere from, I think, 1 through 10. I don't think there's 11s in this. And so you have to make that decision at the beginning of the game, which orientation do you want to keep it? Because you can't sort your cards. You have to keep them exactly in the order that you drew them in. And then from that point forward, you have to play combinations of cards, sort of like a rummy-style game. So you can play a set. You could play like 3 ones or 2 ones or something like that. Or you can do a run, so you could play like a 6, 7, 8, 9. And I think those are the only combos of cards you could play. You could just play a single card, that's fine too. But with that restriction, you're trying to play hands in the center of the board. So if someone puts down 2 2s, well, I could beat that with 3 2s, or I could beat that with like a 6, 7, 8. And every time you beat some cards in the middle, you get to take those, and those are points. And then as soon as someone runs out of all their cards, everyone else gets subtracted as points the number of cards in their hand. So it's something of a race, but there's like a lot of fine nuances to how you want to approach it. It's not super straightforward at first because there's different ways you can earn points. And it was fun. I recommend it.
Brilliant game. One of my favorite games. Did not make my list this year because I learned it last year. So probably it was on my list last year.
Yeah, probably.
But fantastic game. I'm glad you like it, Cody.
Yeah. Number 10, Scout.
My number 10, I was going to introduce as a heavy game, but, after talking about games and thinking about games like Barrage and Brass, Barrage and Brass, Barrage and Brass and Carnegie and games like that, this...
Just finished talking about my favorite game, Scoot.
Scoot. I can no longer,
anyway.
I think, classify this as a heavy game, so I'm going to say medium, leaning towards heavy. This is Revive. Revive is, I love the theme, it's, but even though it doesn't really make sense, it's something about how there's these different clans of people that have been living underground after a fallout, post-apocalyptic nuclear fallout, whatever. And finally, you are generations later re-emerging from the ground and you're reviving the earth, right? I don't know how these people were surviving underground for centuries, but that's besides the point. Essentially,
Silo.
This is a game with a pretty heavy board element. There's a heavy exploration element, so that the board is made up of a bunch of tiles, essentially, that are randomized. And as you explore, you flip them up, and you are then building buildings and trying to get adjacency bonuses with the buildings that you build. And those adjacency bonuses do different things, but mostly they move you up on tracks. You have an enormous, even by modern standards, an enormous player board with 3 different interconnected tracks. And so these adjacency bonuses will be moving you up on those tracks, which let you unlock special powers and buildings. And then there's a card play element as well, where you're tucking cards into your board and triggering bonuses. And lots of Euro-y goodness with a cool theme and very good art pasted on top. I think I have played it 3 or 4 times, and it's a good, solid midweight Euro. So that is Revive.
Yeah, this is ranked 94, homie. So this is in also the top hundo. I wonder how many of our games are going to be in the top 100.
2 for 2.
2 for 2. Yeah, I'm intrigued by this game. Like, I think I've seen the cover before, and even when I look at the picture, like of the board, it doesn't really look particularly interesting. But with your vote of confidence, I'm willing to give this a try.
Yeah, I mean, it may not be as satisfying. I think it took a couple games to really get a satisfying experience out of it. The first game was rough. The second game was still trying to figure it out. It's not super complicated, like I said, compared to, these other heavy Euros we've been talking about. But it's fun. There's a lot of interactions. So,
all right. Well, my number 9, number 2 of the list, but it's not number 2. It's the number 9, is a game that I think Nate maybe also played new this year. So maybe we'll have a crossover.
Well, here's the thing, Cody. I played, I keep track, of course. I've played 123 new games this year. So I don't know. There's a less than 10% chance.
Yeah, let me have a look at mine real quick. So I played 75 unique games last year.
Okay.
Wait, do you say 123 new games or unique games this year?
I don't know. What do you mean? What's the difference?
Like it's the first time you played them, or that's just how many different games total you played?
No, first time I've played them, 123. Yeah.
Dang, dude. Okay, so I have 26 new plays for this year.
So this is your top 50%.
Yeah, basically, dude.
That's funny.
So I mean, I had 36 last year, so I don't get a whole bunch of new plays in. Like, total unique games I've played this year so far is 59. Like
59
multiple plays of each
games.
Different games. Played all those multiple times for the most part, but yeah. So anyway, yeah, I've been a bit busy, like working a YouTube channel.
You are busier than I am.
So,
yes.
Aha. All right, but my number 9, obviously probably not going to be a crossover with Nate now, is one of those games that looks like a family-friendly game. It kind of became popular a couple years ago. This on BGG is 2021, and it seems to be in competition with what is the other one? Is it Patchwork? There's another game that's like a tile placement, but this is Cascadia. Nate, what is the other game?
Calico.
This is kind of Calico. Okay, that's right. Not Patchwork. That's stupid. So Cascadia is sort of a double layered tile placing system, because the tiles you place down have these are little hex tiles, and they have different regions on them. This is based off of the Pacific Northwest, of which I am native to. Nate, do you count as being from the Pacific Northwest?
I'm native to it. I just don't live there right now. But
well, sure, but I mean, like Eastern Oregon, is that still in the?
That's PNW.
PNW?
Yeah, like Boise is almost PNW.
Really?
I mean, I probably not, but I feel like it almost is.
Okay, all right. So we both hail from this region. So each tile has like mountain or rivers or forest, or there's like prairie or whatnot, and you put those down. And then they also have capacity to sustain specific types of life. So I think there's 4 or 5 animal types. So there's elk, fox, or is it elk or moose? Whatever, some big antlered creature. Yeah, okay. Salmon, hawks, and bears, it looks like. So each of those score in different ways. There's like a different set of scoring cards for each animal that they all have a different systems. Like hawks have to be placed a certain number of spaces from each other. Bears have to be like next to each other in different shapes and so forth. So you're putting down these hex tiles. You're trying to get territories next to each other so you can get territory scoring at the end. But you're also trying to build yourself a pattern so you can put down your little animal tokens on top of them and get good scoring as well. That's basically the whole game. There is an expansion that came out for it recently. There might be multiple. And the expansion was like, okay. I wasn't like mega impressed. So kind of the base game is still just fine if you like it. My wife likes this more than me. So that's probably why we get a decent number of plays out of it. I personally enjoyed more Acropolis as a unique tile placement game, but it's still pretty fun. Cascadia. Rank 49, so 3 for 3 for games in the top 100.
I love the drafting, the dual mannered nature of the drafting in this. Dual mannered nature? Which one?
The duality of man.
Yeah, that. No, I like that, and I think the scoring is actually pretty good in this, pretty interesting, and obviously there's different types, so you change them out for different games. I also played this for the first time in 2023, so did not stand a chance for this list.
Ah, dang it. All right. So you played it before me then?
Yeah, I played it I played it last summer, same time as I played Scout, roughly.
Okay. We got this for Christmas last year, so it's been almost exactly a year since I played it.
Okay. My number 9, I did play for the first time in 2024. You did as well, but I do not know if it will make your list or not. This is The White Castle. I was actually kind of surprised that it fell so low because I was really hot on this game earlier in the year. I faded a little bit on it now. Still made the top 10, but it's a great little game. It's a Euro. It's a midweight Euro in a tiny box, right? And I think it's even smaller than Carcassonne. Like it's a tiny box. But it's a meaty, very full game. You only get 9 actions, and you're using on each action you get to take a die, draft a die, place it on the board. Take an action of that strength, right? You have 3 different types of workers that you're trying to get off your player board, and you really are trying to get them off because they will only score you points if you get them off your board, right? You have 3 different types that go to 3 different areas of the board depending on the main action that you take, and they all score a little bit differently. One of them scores immediately and every round. You've got the guys that go up into the White Castle that will be a multiplier for your warriors that are doing something on the side of the board, getting you bonuses. So it's got a few different mechanisms going on. I'm a sucker for dice placement and dice drafting, so I really like that, and it looks really good too. So the White Castle, big fan.
Yeah, Nate, I'm gonna let you know this did not make my top 10. And I currently have a guy coming by on Sunday to buy it from me. So that's where I'm at with White Castle.
Man.
Yeah. Like, I was a bit disappointed by White Castle because it looked really cool. Had it was for a pretty good price for what the game is. It has some nice production value to it, cool artwork, cool little dice. I like the bridges in it. So it all looks really good. But man, like, it is so hard to do anything in the game. Not as though an action is difficult, but to accomplish very much. Like, the game is so short. If you could just have just 1 or 2 extra rounds even, it would be a lot more fun. But as is, I feel like I can barely accomplish anything in the span of the game.
Quickly, I will say a couple things. What you're asking for is actually, so I've heard, the matcha expansion, which...
But it shouldn't have to be an expansion.
Yeah, I hear you. Come on. All right. Also, I would say, I'm assuming you never played this at 3 players. Am I correct?
Yeah, just 2.
Okay. It actually gets easier at 3 players because you can stack dice. So if somebody takes an action you want, you can actually stack your die on top of theirs. You can't do that in 2 players. The game is superior at 3, far and away. In the same manner that I think if you played cartographers with colored pencils instead of lead pencils, it would revolutionize the experience. It's the same thing here.
Crazy.
It sounds dumb, but like playing with 3 players, I think would make the game insanely better. And as a side note, playing cartographers with colored pencils makes it insanely better. So
I don't think we have. Well, I'll have to ask Kirsten. We have colored pens. Does that work?
Yeah, sure. Whatever. Just color. It needs color.
Okay. All right. So anyway, yeah, White Castle, not on my list, but Nate, I respect the entry.
And also,
and now I'm going to get $10 for it.
It's older brother. $10? Dang.
I know. I just wanted it gone, dude.
I'm assuming its older brother might have made your list, but we'll see.
Older brother. Nope, that also did not make my list. Nice try. That also is getting sold.
You made a lot of cuts for only playing 23 games, Cody.
Well, I get it. Well, no, it was like 26, wasn't it?
I don't know.
I forget how many I played.
Does it matter at that point?
Yeah, I played 26 new games. So this is my top 30%-ish. Okay, what are we at? My number 8 now, I think? Yeah, this is a game. The next 2 games are games that you and I played remotely. And so I'm curious if they made your list. So I've not played this game physically. And I had not heard of it. Nate told me about it. I don't know if you played the game physically. I think maybe you did. And then we also played it on BGA. I do not recall. But this is La Granja or La Granja.
Okay.
Whatever you prefer. And La Granja is a hideous looking game, as Euro as you can imagine. Yes, this is like old original version of Castles of Burgundy. These are the sorts of drab yellow and green and brown and tan that you get to play with. Even the silver coins look very much the same.
Like trash.
Yeah. But the clincher is this is a multi-use card game where every card in the game, and you have a hand capacity of like a 4 or something that you start off with, and then you can slowly increase that. Each card you can play in 4 different ways. You can play it underneath your board, and now the board is pretty cool because it has like a different inset around each side to only show parts of the cards. That's cool. But you can play it underneath your board as like an ongoing ability. You can play it to the left of your board to add resource production space of a certain type. You can play it to the right of your board to add not exactly resource production, but more like capacity, I think. But then you can also increase like revenue and hand capacity. Or you can play the cards to the top of your board as a contract that you can fulfill with all the resources you're trying to produce. In addition, there's a larger center board that has these other much larger contracts that you can complete that give you ongoing bonuses and you get points. And then there's like this dice drafting thing where you can get different resources and use those dice. It's basically the function of the game. Very drab, Euro. It didn't make it any higher than number 8 because it didn't like incredibly capture my attention, but I did enjoy the unique aspects of, especially of that multi-use card. Mm-hmm. The contract fulfillment kind of had its own flavor to it. So yeah, I'm certainly willing to play this again, and I enjoyed it more, obviously, than my previous 2 games. But that is La Granja. I am wondering if we're going to see this on Nate's list. I'm not sure. If you played over 120 new games, that's not a great chance, I guess.
I will keep you in suspense till the end of the list then, Cody. Or until it shows up, one or the other.
So are you going to comment on this game then?
Well, I will say a couple things. You mentioned the multi-use cards, kind of, you enjoyed that a lot. That's the thing that hooked me. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, I need to try this game. Because that is fascinating. Every card has 4 different uses, and you're tucking them into your boards. You cover up the other 3 parts of the card, and then you use the part depending on which side of your board. Like, it's just cool, you know. It's a great idea, and I'm surprised it hadn't been done before, to my knowledge. Physically doesn't work so well because the boards are a little too small, so the cards are kind of bumping each other back underneath the board. They're kind of touching and bumping each other. Kind of trash.
That's why you play
execution.
BGA, homie.
Yeah. I will say, ugly game, but the donkey art on the back of the donkey tiles makes up for everything else. So.
All right. Yep.
All right. My number 8 is a flip and write. The first, maybe not the last flip and write to be mentioned on this list, but this one has dry erase markers, and it's based on very successful predecessors. This is Welcome to the Moon, specifically. Welcome to the Moon, I like a lot. I've played Welcome to, and it did not capture my fancy very much. However, I still went out on a limb and bought and tried this, and I was very happy with it because it builds on Welcome to exponentially, I guess you could say. Like it's 8 or maybe 10 different maps that you can use that they're not just different maps. Like they use the same core system of the cards are all double-sided. On one side they have a number, on the other side they have a symbol that's like kind of an action. So you make 3 stacks and you flip the top card over. So it creates 3 pairs of numbers and symbols, right? Kind of Cascadia style. And then you draft one of those pairs. Everyone individually drafts one and then does that number and that action on their player board. But there's like 8 or 10 different maps that all function entirely differently. You know, they're all like their own little game. And so you have that same core system of flipping and picking, but then the way that's integrated into the actual game is radically different for each map. So it's very interesting, has a ton of replayability. If you enjoy Welcome to or any of the other Welcome to games, I'm not sure how many there are, any of the previous ones, if you enjoy them, this is a must-have. It kind of sucks that it's dry erase, but other than that, fantastic game. Love it.
Do you think Welcome to Everdell counts as being as a part of the series?
I don't think it's a flipping right, Cody.
Dang it.
I thought it was My Lil Everdell. Didn't we have this discussion last time?
I did too, but then I was typing in Welcome to because I thought there was multiple games, so I was trying to see what else you're talking about. This is titled Welcome to Everdell, but then it says alternate names, My Little Everdell.
What? Okay, we had an argument about this like a few episodes ago, and I was very much on one side of it, and you told me I was wrong, and I was kind of mad. But now I'm finding out I'm right.
I knew My Little Everdell was what I'm quite certain it was, but did they update the name or something? Why would they do that? Why would you have 2 names for this, dude?
Man, that sucks. Maybe they did My Little Everdell, and then My Little Side, like Stonemeyer got mad at them. They're like, we kind of half trademarked that, so you can't do it. Who knows?
All right. Well, I've not played Welcome to the Moon. Maybe I'll play it someday, and then I'll talk to you about it, Nate.
Maybe.
We'll have a great conversation.
Maybe not.
I'll tell you what I will talk to you about is another game that maybe made your list because we played it not long after La Granja. This is a game that I've had, like, in the back of my mind for a long time, but just, like, never got around to buying it. Probably because of the theme. This is a Mayan-themed game. This is Zulkan, the Mayan calendar. And it's just kind of like the ancient tribal games. I'm never really interested in that.
There's a lot of them.
I don't know, atmosphere. Yeah, and just like, I don't know, it's just the vibe I don't really care about. But it was free to play on BGA, which is going to be a great tagline. Maybe I can do some ads for them or something. And Nate and I got it played. Yeah, baby. And yeah, so the big, some people call it a gimmick. I don't think it's necessarily a gimmick, but the wheel part of the board, not exactly a calendar, so maybe that part sure is a gimmick. Okay. But it's got this big central gear that turns, and it turns 5 other gears. And sure, you could just turn each gear individually without having the big one. So maybe it's partially a gimmick. I'll give you that. But it's still a cool, like, mechanical marvel that you can get to play in board game form. So the main thrust of the game is this is a timing system with a drop-off mechanic. So you try to put down some of your workers on one of each of these 5 different wheels that all have different specialties. And as those wheels advance every round, you can choose when and if you want to pull off a worker. And if you pull off a worker, the later you pull them off of a given wheel, the stronger of an ability they're going to give you. And if you get them all the way to the end and you pull them off, you can actually choose any of the previous actions that were available on that wheel. Then there's a few other components, like there's some pretty standard, like you're moving up on a track to get points. There's buildings you can build to get some basic abilities. You have to feed your workers, and so you have to get enough food to do that every round. So really the main thrust that's unique is that drop-off mechanic. So on your turn, you have to decide, will I place workers or will I pull them off? You can't do both. So the timing is key. And I enjoyed it. It still wasn't like a magnificent game in my eyes, but I enjoyed playing it, and I think I enjoyed it a little bit more than La Granja, which is why it's my number 7 and not my number 8.
The first time we played it, I thought it was kind of maybe like I thought maybe it was kind of gimmicky in the sense that it was so there was such an overwhelming, amount of possibilities that there was really no real way that you could actually effectively strategize. So I thought it was kind of gimmicky in that, where it's like, whoa, it's like the spinning and all the gears moving is so like you can't even wrap your head around it. That good luck ever wrapping your head around it, But we played it a second time, and I felt like I could, once I understood the game, then playing it a second time, I felt like I could actually focus more because I really kind of understood how the gears moved and how they worked. So I was wrong on that first play.
Sometimes it happens, dude, and then we learn.
But I'm stoked that it made your top 10. That's pretty cool. Do you think you would buy it physically for that tactileness of spinning the gears?
No, I don't think so. I think I'd rather spend my money on something else. Okay. I'll just play it in BGA with you every now and then.
Absolutely. All right, my number 7, actually also another flipping right. We got them back to back here, baby.
What?
I doubt this made your list because you've only played it once, but you did enjoy it. We just played Next Station London not too long ago. Actually, technically, so I've also played Next Station Tokyo now. Played it very recently. I've only played it a couple times. I think it's the superior game. It's more interesting. It has a little more depth of play to it than Next Station London does. But I'm going to stick with London because that's the one I've played the most. That's the one that earned the spot, even if Tokyo's a slightly better variation. But this is a flip and write from Matthew Dunstan. A very simple one. Comes in a very tiny box. And essentially, there's just a very small deck of cards with a few different shapes. And those shapes are also on your player board, which is kind of a map of potential subway routes. It's a map of London, right? But it's really not. It's just a bunch of circles and lines and shapes. But essentially, you have 4 different starting spots. So you have 4 different colored pencils. So each round, you're going to have 1 pencil, and the top card gets flipped. It says, like, whatever, it's a triangle. So from your starting location, you have to go to a triangle, right? And now the next card gets flipped, maybe it's a square. So now from either end of your subway line that you're starting to create, you have to go to a square. That's just how it works. You do that for 4 rounds. You're going to pass the pencils around, right, so that you do all 4 colors. It gets a little tight because, subway lines can't cross directly. You'll have a crash potentially, right? So they can intersect at stations. So, And if they do, you'll score more points. So you're kind of trying to connect different stations. And then additionally, all of the pencils have little special powers too that you can activate once per round. So that's pretty fun. It's so like the first time we played it, I thought it was like 50% luck. Maybe it's still, maybe you can make the argument that it still is, but I thought it was like going to be a play it once or twice and be done with it. But we just got hooked on it, man. It plays so fast. It's portable. You can take it anywhere. We've played it so much in different environments that I sleeved it just to actually protect the cards from the elements, because we've played it on picnic tables outside and stuff like that. So it's a great travel game, and it's a fun little just flip and right networking game. So Next Station London. Yeah. I would also recommend Next Station Tokyo.
Did not make my list, although it was a new play for me this year. I did, however, enjoy it, I think, a bit more than Cartographers. And assuming it's like, what is this, probably like a $10 game?
15, I would say. I would guess.
15? Okay, something like that. I may be able to nab it and then keep it and then play it. Or maybe I'll just get Next Station Tokyo.
This and Scout, I feel like I deserve commissions on, because I've, like, by proxy sold so many copies of these games just by teaching them to other people. So
you got to become a brand ambassador, dude. Then you can just sell these games, get your little commission. Very well, my number 6. Nate, I'm finally getting into some territory of games that I know you haven't played, or I'm pretty sure you haven't played. Okay. I think the next... Let's see. I have 6 more entries total, and 5 of them you have not played.
Nice.
So now finally we got some good stuff, and we're actually getting into in the good half.
Can I guess
the good games?
Your next game then?
I mean, if you want to, you got like no information, but go for it.
Acropolis.
No, I played Acropolis last year, homie.
Okay, okay, gotcha.
And also you've played Acropolis. So.
That's why you said 5 of the next 6 weren't. So I thought this.
Oh no! But this one is. Let's see. It was only number 2 that you have also played. So all the rest you have not played. So number 6. This was sort of not a panic buy, but a spontaneous buy. It was a compulsion, because it also was on sale on Amazon, and it looked interesting, and I looked into it, and it was ranked well on BGG, looking at 1128. Also, I think we forgot to keep track. I'm sure we stepped out of the top 100, especially when you said Next Station London. That's probably not top 100.
It's in the top 200, I think.
Is it?
It's pretty high, man.
So maybe at least 50% of our list is going to be that. And this is it feels like a newfangled game, because I swear I'd not heard of this until just seeing it for sale on Amazon. This is from 2020, Alma Mater.
Wow.
And I believe it has another game that it's kind of similar to, is Coimbra, I believe.
Yeah, Coimbra I'm very interested in, because it's dice drafting and placement.
And that one's newer, right?
Maybe. I think so.
I thought it was like
But these are the Italian boys, right?
Yeah, them boys. We got all sorts of names. You got Flaminia Brasini, Virginio Gigli, Stefano Luperto, Antonio Tinto, and then Akitaka. I don't know.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, at least Virginio Gigli is also Barrage. Am I correct?
It's not looking like it. Barrage is Simone Luciani. And
that's right.
Tommaso something.
I'm confused because Simone Luciani also did a few games with Virginio Gigli, like Lorenzo and Grand Austria Hotel.
Did he? Them Italian designers, they got a good thing going, it seems like.
Yeah,
and
man.
Alma Mater. So this is weird. I have some mixed feelings about Alma Mater. I've only played it once, so it may be solidified in its place after I play it again. This is a game where it has 1 or 2 unique systems it implements. So the theme is that you're in like the 1400s, you're creating a university, and you're trying to attract both professors and students to build your university. One weird thematic disconnect about it is you don't get like income for getting students. I feel like that's one core mechanic of universities, is that if you get students...
This is an international university, not an American one. So
yes, it's publicly funded. Okay, that might be it. Anyway, so yeah, that's the core mechanic the core concept of the game. The mechanic is each player has you have your player color, But then you don't personally own your player color of books. The books are the big catch that I think probably gets everyone excited. It's like a cool acrylic little piece. So sure. There's like the red books, blue books, green, and so forth. There's also sort of a neutral book that doesn't really substitute always. It's just kind of its own thing. That's the dictionaries. It's the yellow books. So how the game is unique is that you can acquire your own books the cheapest. You have like a built-in part of your player board where you can buy like 6 books for like 1 coin each. Otherwise, if you're going to buy other people's books, like on the board, it can be like 3 to 4 coin just to buy a book, or you can buy them directly from other people, and you can buy them anywhere from like 2 to 4 or 5 coin, I think is the price. So never as cheap as you can get your own. But what you can do in the game is all the students and all the professors, they all require books to be paid for. The professors in particular, the first time a type of professor is purchased, you indicate which books you use to make that purchase. And then that is the ongoing price for the professor in the future. And there's always like one book you spend the most of. So like the second level professor costs like 3 books of one color, 2 books of another, and 1 book of a third color. So if you make the cost be 3 of your own books, now your books are becoming more popular, they're more valuable, so other people are going to be trying to get them. There's kind of another side mechanic on this like technology track that also determines that. So not trying to like get into all the specific details, but you're basically trying to make your personal resource more valuable to other people so that they're also trying to get it.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. I like that system. It created a bunch of weird, I don't know, like patterns in the game that you didn't really see in other games. The main thing I disliked about it is that the books, this is like the core of the game, and it is worker placement. There's literally like 2 spots on the board where you can get books. And then everywhere else like requires books. Ooh. So Kirsten and I, we found it really hard to do anything for most of the game. Like books is a scarce resource. Sure, you can buy them from yourself for like 1 additional action. But like, for example, this is a game where you start off with 4 workers and you can acquire 2 more workers throughout the game, potentially, if you do the right things. Both of us, we didn't get our extra workers until I think round 5 of 6. Like the requirements to get that extra worker was really, really difficult. So I don't know if we were just playing really terribly or I read a rule wrong. I think this is just a very like late stage style game where everything kind of starts coming together at the end. So I'm hoping that with a second play, the experience will like help me do better. And part of it could just be like with the 2-player game, you're playing with sort of a dummy player. Maybe that changes things, but yeah, Alma Mater, good game with some confusing twists.
Well, I hope it opens up for you on a second play and kind of like is more engaging on a second play. Because this is a game that I've always like, it's not ranked super, I mean, it's almost in the top 1,000, which is definitely not bad.
Sure.
But it's always super cheap too. And so like those 2 things combined, I've always kind of just assumed it's not that great of a game. But I don't know, man. I mean, just looking at it and hearing you talk about it, it seems like a solid design. And it's got a good look too. It's got kind of that cartoony but still clean look. You know, it kind of looks like a Garfield game a little bit. Garfield games are a little bit, they've got kind of a dirtier look to them, but it looks like a Garfield game kind of.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm wondering about like adding a house rule to it, or like each action space, maybe you just get 1 free book of like a given color. Like that could maybe help. But it's like, I don't know, if you have to add a house rule to make the game more playable, that's a little bit iffy. So currently this is obviously number 6 on my list, but that could certainly drop.
Also.
Yes.
I went in different directions with that. I'm sure you know better.
Yeah, all right.
As a side note, I was wrong about Next Station London. It's ranked 618, so nowhere near the top 100.
Oh, dang. Dang, son.
My number 6 has already been mentioned, so it's our first official crossover. Cody.
What? Can I guess? Let me guess.
Yeah, go for it.
Guess. You're coming at me with La Granja?
That's correct. La Granja.
Aha.
Yeah, man. Everything you said, except that I like it more. It is, okay. It's such a clean system. It clicks along so nicely. I love the multi-use cards. And One thing that I always find a bit strange is that it's very mechanical, and that you jump from one phase, like within a round, you jump from one phase to the next, and they're very different, and there's no like clean, smooth transition. It's just like you just jump from phase to phase. It's like, here's the card playing phase. Now here's the dice drafting phase. And they're not even trying to like...
Well, wait, Nate. Would you like to use an anytime action?
BGA just assaults you with constantly. No, it's pretty good on BGA, honestly. Most games are that we've played on there. But yeah, it's a fantastic game. I mean, you already talked about it, so I won't belabor the point, but I enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah, although I will say the fact that it's number 6 out of like 120 for you, but it's number 8 out of like 26 for me, that's still a significant gap, probably in how much more you liked it than I did.
Yeah, no, I think it speaks volumes of like how much more I like it than you. It's not just 2 spots higher. It's a lot higher.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still good game. All right, well, that was quick. Now we can jump into my number 5. This was a game that I think was in the back of my mind for a little bit, but still kind of a recent discovery. There is another game. Let me look at this. So this is by Dave Beck, and isn't he?
Oh,
yeah,
I've heard
Luthier.
of that.
Luthier is the one that I'm also keeping an eye out. That looks very unique. But no, Nate, this is Distilled that I nabbed at a great price again for like Black Friday or a little bit before. I got a bunch of games this Black Friday, dude. There's some good deals. Distilled, I would describe this as a push your luck contract fulfillment game. You don't usually see those two things combined. Like push your luck is you're just trying to get as much stuff as you can. The core mechanic of this game is you're trying to produce alcohol, and there's a bunch of different recipes for different types of alcohol. They're always going to require you need to produce in the first place, you have to have a water card and a yeast card, and then at least one type of sugar card. And there's different sugars in the game. There's like plant sugars, there's grain sugars, fruit sugars. I think maybe those are like the main 3. And then there's like some sub varieties and everything. So all these cards make like one big little pantry deck that you're kind of slowly building. And so let's say each round you can only produce one type of alcohol. So I think you play 7 rounds, but you can't produce any more than that one type of alcohol. So 7 alcohols total. And then what you do is you take all the cards that you're going to just drop into this vat, basically, including your sugars. You're going to mix it all around, and then you randomly remove 2 cards from that mix. And then whatever you have remaining, that is the recipe that you made. So let's say like the sugars are the main defining factor of a given type of alcohol. So let's say you're trying to make like a brandy or something. I don't remember what they all take, but maybe it requires like 2 sugar cards or 2 fruit sugars. Maybe you're going to try to add like 3 or maybe even 4 fruit sugar cards into your vat for this round, so that even if you discard 2, you for sure will have the 2 that you need. But those cards are really expensive, so you may want to try to just like stack it with some cheaper like neutral cards that you can slough off and it won't be an issue. So that's where the push your luck element comes in. But if you don't produce like the alcohol you're really trying to this round, that can lose you a lot of points. There's some like competitive objectives you're trying to get that might dock you for. There's kind of this race for who can produce a given type of spirit first. So that's basically the game there. It's got great production value. I love the insert for the game. It's a game trays designed like an insert and then these little tray thingies that holds everything. So yeah, great all around game. I'm excited to give this another try. The asymmetry of it is not incredibly strong, but there are a lot of unique items you can purchase, so you can kind of make your game be a little bit different as you go.
Yeah, most games
Distilled.
Most games either need like player powers from the get-go, or you need to be able to develop your personal game differently than other people do. Or
yeah, exactly.
The game just has to be really solid if it doesn't do either of those things, right?
Or you have to build 3 pieces off of your board, and then you can finally unlock your player power. Then you're good to go.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to try Distilled. It seems like a kind of like inspiration for a game where, and also thinking about Luthier, whatever his other game is, they both seem like he looked at a system that exists in the real world and says, there's a game in there. There's a game in that system that exists in life, right? So Luthier or whatever is about an orchestra or maybe creating music. I construe it with Lacrimosa, but especially with Distilled, he's like, here's something in life that has a process with steps, but there's a lot of different variety and variability within this process. This is just a board. This is just waiting to be put on cardboard, right? So I know I've done that a lot where I'll just be like interacting with something in my life, some kind of system or process, or I'm learning about something new, and I'm just like, this is just a board game waiting to be made, right? Like this is just the perfect, So I love that he did it, and I'm glad it's so successful. The only thing I don't like is the character art. I think it looks bad, but
yeah, it's okay. There's also like this thematic disconnect because you play as a specific character or like a specific brewer, but they're from like across history. So you could be like a monk or something, or you like this. It's like this Joan of Arc looking character, like in armor from like the 1200s. But then you can also be like this Jamaican lady with a trumpet. You just make like, I don't know how this all comes together, but
suspension of disbelief, Cody.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay, my next game, my number 5. I will be pretty quick about, not because it's a crossover, but because I've only played the game once and it was a while ago. It's still hit my number 5 spot, though. I really am just itching to play it again. This is Heat Pedal to the Metal.
Yes.
Fantastic game. It's a racing game, obviously. And, a lot of people say, and I think I agree, that you don't need to care about cars or racing for this game to be good. A lot of people enjoy this game. They don't care about that at all. However, and I agree with that, but on the flip side of that, the thematic realism and the theme is integrated so well that it's so immersive at the same time. So I feel like both of those things are true, at the same time. And it's mostly a hand management game, and I don't think there's deck building. It's been a while now since I've played. I don't think it's deck building, but it's mostly hand management. You're trying to go as fast as you can, and you kind of can go as fast as you want, right? But you need to slow down for corners, and you need to control the heat of your, I'm not sure if it's your engine or if it's your brakes, but whatever. The heat in general, you need to keep, down on your vehicle, or else you'll burn out, or you'll spin out on a corner and you'll crash and stuff like that. So it's really cool. It's like you're speeding up out of a corner, and then you're slowing back down for the next corner, and you're managing your speed all the time. And the actual heat of your engine, I think you have heat cards and stuff like that. So it's mostly hand management, but it's very, interactive. It's a race, right? You can draft on and slipstream off of other people. And it was a heart-pounding race. The only time I've played it, I very much enjoyed it, and really looking forward to playing it again.
Yeah, this is another one of those games that seemed like it became really popular around last year. And just like the theme or the idea of it just didn't seem particularly interesting to me.
Yeah.
But that happened with Scout, and then you brought it and you played it, and I was like, all right, okay, I can see. So, yeah, I'll have to give this a try. But it's like a really expensive game, too, so I don't really want to spend like $80+ just to give it a try, So, we'll see. My number 4 should also be pretty quick, because it is also a game that I've only played once and was a while ago. Actually, that's going to be the same for my number 3, but we'll get to that. My number 4, I have peripheral experience with, because this is not exactly something of a redux of a famous Stonemaier game. This is Wormspan. And this is done, let's see. Yeah, by Connie Vogelman, but she didn't design Wingspan. Wingspan was Elizabeth Hargrave.
That's correct.
Yeah, I always mix up Hargrove and Hargrave. But Connie Vogelman, she also worked with Stonemaier on Apiary, which I played, and that was like, I was a bit unimpressed with Apiary, but Wormspan was pretty fun. So, it was a while ago. It was like towards the beginning of this year, so I really don't remember lots of the specifics. But what I do remember is that it basically takes Wingspan, and it really makes those 3 tracks, the 3 rows that you're building your cards on, more interesting. You can do a lot more things. You don't have to just focus on one or the other. Like, you can kind of expand across each of them. Yeah, again, basically, I don't recall how everything's different. I know that they also add kind of the central player board thing where you're advancing your token around each round, and you can kind of unlock these bonuses depending on where it lands. And I think they did a great job with it. It's probably a more compelling theme. It's a bit more vibrant, more colorful. Obviously, it's much more fantastical since these dragons aren't real. But they did a great job on kind of the dragon concepting, because they came up with all sorts of different unique dragons in the same way that Wingspan has, all these different birds. So yeah, they did a great job. I do want to get this and add it to my collection at some point, and I recommend giving it a play.
It's different enough from Wormspan that you would want to own it. So that's good to hear.
Yeah. Well, plus Wingspan, I can just play digitally all the time. So Wormspan, rank 177.
I don't love Wingspan, but I like it enough. I think it's a good game, and I like Wingspan enough that I really want to try Wormspan. Also, fun fact, Vogelman, what's her name? Connie Vogelman? Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Vogelman is German for Birdman. Just thought that was kind of funny.
What?
Okay.
The fates have long foretold the creation of this. Well, but she lost it, though. She did Wormspan. She didn't do Wingspan.
Yeah, but it's Wingspan adjacent. I mean, come on, give her a break.
A dragon is a birdman, so there you go.
Yeah, well, Hargrave in Australian means birdman, so.
I don't think so.
My number 4 is the first, but maybe not the last, Alexander Pfister game on my list. Actually, is it the first Alexander Pfister game on my list? Yes, it is. Okay. The first, but maybe not the last, Alexander Pfister game on my list. This is Maracaibo. I don't think I've talked about this because I've only played it relatively recently.
You've sent me cryptic pictures of it, I feel multiple times. But
this game has, I think it came out five or less years ago, and it has some of the worst graphical design I've seen in a game from the past 15 years. It's horrific. I don't know.
That's saying something, dude.
It's like he did it himself on MS Paint. It's bad. The art is fine. It's just the graphic design is pretty rough. But this is a rondel game in which you are sailing your ship around the, Caribbean area, stopping at different ports and doing different actions. And so it's a rondel. You'll go around 4 times, but as with all good rondel games, it will change. So every time you go around, the board's going to be somewhat different. For a couple reasons. One reason is that there is kind of a legacy campaign. It's not really legacy. It's a campaign that you go through just to change the board state up. So you kind of go through these little mission cards that give you objectives, and then there's a bunch of these, they're called legacy tiles. They're overlay tiles that it will tell you when to add them to the board, and they change up some of the actions. So that's kind of interesting. As well as, there's a bunch of cards in this game that are multi-use cards, and some of them you play that'll let you put an assistant out at a specific spot on the board, and when your ship makes it around to that assistant, it has an action on the card connected with that assistant that you can perform. And there's a bunch of those in the deck, so you kind of have your own special spots you can create on the board. But it also kind of feels like a race, because once somebody gets to the end of the rondel, everybody's done for that round. So it's got kind of this race vibe to it where it's you kind of want to stop and take your time and hit lots of actions, but the first person to get around is going to end it for everyone, and then we all go back to the start. So if you have some actions you want to take towards the end of the rondel, you got to kind of rush to get there. So there's this tension the whole game of okay, how far? Because you can move up to 7 spaces, and there's only 25 or 30 spaces on the whole board. So you can go pretty fast, potentially. And so there's always this tension of how fast is the other person going to move? Can I push my luck by going short and still make it to that space later? So it's pretty cool. Theme is, it's got it's like colonialism adjacent, it's got, which is always a little bit touchy, but I don't think it's too strong in that. It's pretty light. So people who are bothered by that probably won't be bothered as much by this as they might be by something like Mombasa, but it's not as in your face. So it's just, I don't see it that way at all. I see it as you're just sailing around the Caribbean doing actions, and the game looks kind of nice. So
it's something about this game. I think it's the box cover. I'm looking at it now. I see it's from 2019. Every time I see this, I just assume it's from 2004.
It's just got an old vibe, right?
Yeah, it really does. I think that's why I'm just always uninterested every time I hear about it. But look, rank 67, homie. So obviously people like it.
It's really good. I've been very happy with it. It's my number 4 of the year. So.
All right. Well, I'll have to give that a try at some point. But First, Nate, you have to give a try my number 3, which yet again is a game that I only played once, and it was quite a while ago. But it's a very compelling game, and if I spend another hour to relearn how it all works, I'll get it down to the table
I know
again.
what it is.
Yeah, Vladimir Suki, Evacuation, homie. Yes, Evacuation. Basic idea is you've got a big central player board, or not a player board. It's the big central board where everyone is on, and there's 2 planets, and on each planet there's like different quadrants or areas. So you all on the first planet, like Earth, you start off on one side, and then you have a fully functioning engine that you start off with. So you're producing food, I think currency, I forget all else what you're getting out of it. But the idea is that you have to purchase spaceships and then transport your pieces over to the other planet and then build them. So the problem is there's like an Agricola style system here where you have to pay food to feed your people, but you have to pay on both planets. And that food requirement changes each round. So like the first round, there's nobody on the new planet, so there's no food requirement there. But you have to pay like 4 or 5 food on Earth. Then the next round, it moves down a little bit on Earth and starts to increase on the other side. And it doesn't matter if like where you're at in the game, like that's how much food is required according to what round it is, like rounds 1 through 4. So if you're behind, like you can't just take food with you. You have to be producing it on one side or the other. So you have to disassemble your engine and reassemble it in the right time and meet all these requirements of having like a certain number of pieces out on the board and territories covered and whatnot in order to win. So my main complaint with it is the way they claim the game is made to be played is it's not exactly a race game. It's like you have to satisfy like these 3 conditions. Anyone who didn't just loses no matter what. Anyone who did, now there's like something of a tiebreaker. But besides that, it's not a point-based game. It does have a point version of it, though, that you have to learn and play a little bit differently. So Kirsten and I played it the standard way the first time, and that was a fun experience, but I don't think I necessarily want to do that a second time is the problem. Like, you kind of go through the race. Okay, we barely did it. Okay, now the experience is done. So for future games, I'd want to try out the point-based system and actually evaluate like how well am I doing compared to how Kirsten is doing and so forth. But definitely recommend it. It's got great production, good art. It's cool.
Knowing that you're not a big fan of race games, I'm surprised. Well, I understand that if that's the recommended way to play, of course it makes sense that was how you tried it the first time. I'm surprised that you didn't prioritize getting it back to the table, before you forgot half the rules, right? Because like knowing you, obviously you like point-based a lot more. And so being intrigued by the game after one play, I'm surprised you didn't, try to quickly-ish follow that up with potentially the more interesting variant.
Sure. Well, I think we got this at the same time that we got like Nucleum. Carnegie might have been around there too. So we got a bunch of
That's a heavy
games.
shipment.
It was a huge box, dude. So I had to like spend a lot of time like learning each game. And by the time like I got through Nucleum, like Evacuation is probably a couple of games ago. I was like, I don't recall anything how this works. But
and now you've got other games like you recently played Nucleum again. I know, and you enjoyed it. And now you've got Distilled too. So you've got these other heavy games that are a little flashier, a little bit more like locked into your brain, so you're more likely to come back to them than to go dig up an older one and relearn it. So
sure. Hey, tell you what I got for Christmas though. We got Forest Shuffle. We got Planted, which is another very light one. We also got Duel for Middle Earth. So we got a bunch of light ones coming up the pipe that we'll actually get to crank out. So that should be fun.
Nice. All right, my number 3 will be pretty quick because I've talked about it a handful of times on the podcast, and in addition to that, it's kind of a abstract game that's difficult to explain. This is Arborea. Arborea is just fantastic. It's an incredible design with delayed worker placement and tracks, similar to Tzolk'in. I'm sure the designer of this played Tzolk'in and got some inspiration from it. Essentially, you place workers down on, there's like 6 or technically like 12 different tracks. You place your workers down, and then the tracks move over the course of your turn and other players' turns, and you can kind of jump off the track whenever you want, and then trigger all these actions depending on your jumping off point. And obviously, the longer you wait, the better your jumping off point is and the more stuff you trigger. Very cool system, very difficult to wrap your head around after even one play. It took me I think halfway into the second game was when I really started to understand how to play the game. So it's very abstract and kind of difficult, but it's a beautiful game. The world is very captivating. It's very, fantastical, right? All these created beasts or invented beasts and worlds and art. It looks incredible. And it has some other cool things. It's got shared resources. So whenever you produce resources, there's a general market of them. And it increases when you produce them. And you can either spend them on your turn, which is good because then nobody else can spend them, right? But if you don't spend them, you'll earn points. And so every time you produce resources, there's this pros and cons of, do I want to use them so that other people can't, or do I want to take the points for them, but then other people can potentially use them and probably will. So that's a really cool system too. There's a lot more to the game, but it looks brilliant and it plays brilliant. So I love it.
Yeah, I know you've talked about this game a couple of times. It definitely looks interesting to me. It's kind of a crazy looking board.
Absolutely.
Lots of color and tracks and whatnot going there. So yeah, I'm excited to give this a try. I don't know when I'll actually get it to the table, but at some point. It's probably of the ones you've described that I haven't played yet. That's probably up there, if not the one I'm most excited to give a try.
Cool.
Yeah. I'll tell you what my number 2 is, though. This is a game that I considered actually backing. There's a few games that I actually get excited to kickstart. And I didn't end up kickstarting this one, but it's because every month I spend my whole board game budget on games that already exist. I don't have the patience to wait.
Games that already exist. I love it.
Yeah, I know. So this one, I just waited, and then it came out, and then I bought it, and then I played it, and you have played it.
I don't know what this is.
This is a Garfield game.
You don't know what this is? Ezra and Nehemiah. Okay.
Yeah, baby. Ezra and Nehemiah. Nehemiah or Nehemiah?
Nehemiah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway. So, Shem and Sam did a great job with this game. It's rank 907. I feel like this should be higher, but I think this is one of those games where a lot of people are like, Bible-based game, I'm going to rank it a 1. But then, sure, there were some people ranking a 10 to outrank a 1. And it's it kind of gets into that little ranking game. You can follow it in the comments. It's pretty funny, childish. Actually. Sure. But it does still have an overall rating of 8.3, which is pretty high. Yeah, it looks very different from the rest of your Garfield games. It still has the Garfield vibe, but it's since it's set in Israel, it's very deserty and brown and tan. It's kind of different from all of your North Sea games that are all very blue and lush, as well as your West Kingdom games, which are kind of very red and green. And yeah, it's like a standalone, so it's not this is not part of a Garfield trilogy, but it is in their ancient anthology series, I think it is. And yeah, they did great work with it. So probably the main thing I like about it is there's plenty of things I like about it, but the main catch with it is the colored banner action system. So it has sort of a Viscounts of the West Kingdom style. You have 3 cards on your center board that the right one will slide off. No, they don't slide off. You can replace them out, but it's the same thing where you have 3 different cards. But then they have potentially 3 different colors on those cards. It's gray, red, or blue. And those colors relate to different, not specific actions, but different realms of actions on the board. So there's red actions you can take, there's blue actions, and there's gray actions. So you're trying to maximize your little, the deck that you have and your player board to be able to do the best on one specific type of action. So maybe you're going to build up some red banners so that you have a stronger red turn, and then maybe you'll slowly start morphing that over the next couple of turns to where you can take a really good blue turn at some point. And I like how you don't choose a specific action to take like you do in most other games. You're going to choose that color, and then you can take multiple actions in that color as much as you can spend the banners. I feel like that's a genius concept. I don't really know if that's particularly been done. Well, I'm sure maybe it's been done, but I haven't played other games that really focus on it in that way. And just for time's sake, there's a bunch of other things in the game, but I enjoyed it. I like the theme, like the mechanics, love the production. They did a good job. Yeah.
Yeah, did not make my list. I know, right? The blasphemy even.
Was it your number 11,
No.
Nate?
This game, it's so weird because after we played it, I was like, dang, good game, you know? And then it fell really quickly, and I'm not sure why. I think possibly it's just a little too mechanical that it doesn't grip me too much, and it's weird. That's weird because I'm not somebody who normally places too much stock into theme or theme integration or the aesthetic or vibe of a game. But I think on this one, and actually that's funny because the theme integration is actually really good in this, but the game still feels really mechanical. And a lot of Garfield games do, but this one I think it felt especially mechanical. And I don't know why that bothers me. I really don't know. And so maybe it's just because I only played it once and it was a while ago, and so it's just kind of faded, and I'm just kind of like,
oh, sure.
I think I enjoyed it, but like I don't remember it super well, So I would have to table it again, I feel like, to revalidate my opinion on it, but it has slipped some. Still a top 100 game for me overall, but not super high. So
sure. Yeah, that can happen. There's definitely probably a fair number of games I have that may have even slipped off my top 100 just because I played them once and it was like 5 years ago, so I just barely even remember it. Which is kind of sad. Why can't we play every game all the time,
There's
Nate?
way too many. I am starting to experience a little fatigue where I'm like, I mean, there's just too many. There's just too many. And I want to be careful. Like, this could be a whole board banter on itself, so I'll be brief here. But I want to be careful with like how much I play and how many games I acquire and that sort of thing, because I think fatigue can set in quickly, and I think there's a fair number of people that have dropped out of the hobby. Like, I think some people go really hard into it for like 5 years, and then they peak and then they drop hardcore because of the fatigue, where it's just like, it's too much of a good thing. It's overwhelming. And then all of a sudden you just start to lose interest because it's just too much. Well,
I think it can become a little bit exhausting because there's sort of this fever to find like, oh, I want the next good game. Yeah. Like I want my next favorite game, which it's kind of been that way for me. Like I love Scythe and nothing has replaced Scythe. And it's a little bit sad. It's like, I want to find a new game. And then there's so many games that come out all the time. It does become, like, I think, a bit overwhelming. So yeah, have to be careful.
The thing about being addicted to games, which I would say to a certain degree, I probably am. I really don't own that many. My collection is under 50. I really don't own that many games. But I would say that probably clinically I am addicted in the sense that it's like, I'm always like looking at board game news, seeing like, I know tons of games that came out in 2024, but I've probably only played a few. But I'm fully aware of many of them. And I understand this addiction mindset to be like, even if you have lots of stuff that you like, you see the next new flashy thing and you're like, that looks amazing, I'm thinking of like Unconscious Mind looks amazing. SETI looks amazing. Like, there's so many games that came out in Essen and all these conventions and all these games. It's just like this constant flow of board games constantly. And there's always newer ones that just look amazing. So I understand of just getting caught in this never ending vicious, just like you're always buying, you're spending thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars a year. Maybe some people are just eating up Kickstarters and everything. And I can really understand how it drains people. So,
yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, too true. But all that to say, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is the follow-up, in a way, to my number 4. My number 2 is Alexander Pfister's Great Western Trail. I love this game, man. It is so good. It's another rondel. This one's not, so Maracaibo is like, once somebody gets to the end, everybody's done. This one's not like that. This one, you go at your own pace. In some ways, it still feels like a race because when you get to the end, you get to sell your hand of cows, and you can make a bunch of points out of that. So that's kind of your end goal always. But I just love how the board state changes. You can build buildings along this route. It's another rondel, so you can build buildings with special actions that only you can do. Really cool, and it's got kind of deck building, but more so I would say hand management, where a lot of the actions require you to discard a cow from your hand to do something, but you're trying to manage your hand because once you get to the end, you basically sell your hand of cows and you want variety. So you're always you want to make sure by the time you get to the end that you have the most variety in your hand because that'll earn you the most points and the most money. And so a lot of times you're like, ooh, I really want to do this action. I have to discard this cow, but this is the only cow of this type in my hand. So am I going to draw another one, or am I going to draw a copy of one in my hand? Because that won't help me. So that's something you're kind of always constantly balancing. And then you also have the like, okay, you can move up to 4 or up to 5 spaces. So how do you speed run it, or do you stop and smell the roses and do lots of actions? So yeah, it's just a fantastic design. I have the second edition and it looks great. Very happy with it.
You know what's sad is I do not think I've played any Alexander Pfister games.
Dude,
I'm like going through his list. I've heard of so many of them, and I know that you've played so many of them because you'll bring them up all the time. But I haven't played a single one.
He is
like Isle of Skye, Broom Service, none of them.
Broom Service, highly underrated. I mean, it was a flash in the pan. I think it won the Spiel des Jahres or Kennerspiel maybe, and nobody cares about it anymore. Understandably, a pretty ugly game, but man. So many of his games I love. Isle of Skye, one of my favorite games. Great Western Trail.
He does have
Maracaibo, obviously, also some of my favorite games. So,
well, he has 3 games in the top 100. Yeah. Granted, 2 of them are both Great Western Trails.
Well, that doesn't count.
I don't think counts. Yeah, so 2 of them. Anyway, all right. Well, now we get down to business. We get to talk about my number 1, Nate. I thought for a moment that this would replace Scythe as my number 1 favorite game. Yes, it would dethrone it. And for a moment in my mind, I think it almost did. And then I was like, I just don't think it has the longevity that Scythe does for me. And so I think it's going to land solidly at number 2. Well, we'll have to see, because as we're recording, it is December 27th. So I'm going to wait until
not official
the beginning
yet.
Of the year. Yes. Well, and then I'll have to do, the pub meeple and like sort everything, see what our new 100 is, and maybe we'll have an episode based off of all that. But as is, what's funny is I played this and it landed at like I don't know, number 14 or 15 on my list the first play, and then I kind of set it aside and we had a bunch of other games to play, and then we finally got it to the table again. I think it was when Kirsten and I went on vacation in October, and I was like, this is it. This is the one. This is my new penultimate favorite game.
How many games do you think just need that second play and you will fall in love with them?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Evacuation, maybe?
Maybe. I don't think Evacuation had the majesty to take over that Nucleum did. Evacuation very well might land in my top 10, though, after a second play. So we'll see. But my number 1... I don't think I accidentally said it because I've been trying to wait.
I'm trying
to build up the tension. Okay, perfect. This is Nucleum. Nucleum. Such a masterpiece, Nate. The game, it takes great concepts from other games. Not exactly steals, but it kind of borrows some close examples. But then it merges it all with a couple of its own things and makes just this beautiful bit of a game. So Nucleum has a pretty strong networking mechanic that's very similar to the way Brass does it. I mean, networking is networking, so like Ticket to Ride, like there's some similarities there, whatever. But it has a similar system to where you're trying to build to different cities, and then each of those cities has squares where you can build a specific building from your player mat. So that's kind of like Brassy, but they do a good job of it. And then this includes one of the designers from Barrage. So this is Simone Luciani. They add a different Italian guy for this one. They add David Terzi to work on this one. Which David Terzi, did he do Anachrony? Is that what I'm thinking of?
That's correct. And he does a lot of solo modes for other games, I think.
Ah, okay. So he gets in there. I'm sure he did the solo mode for this game too then. But as such, the system that I really like in Barrage, which is that energy production system to where on a given turn, you're trying to use limited resources to get as much energy as you can. It does that in this, but it does it a little bit differently. It has its own way that it incorporates it. But how it wraps it all together is this very interesting player board mechanic concept thing. So for one, each player board has a unique set of like ability tiles that you're going to try to activate throughout the game. So they'll be like, if you can get them activated, you now get ongoing abilities. Some of them you activate, you get like a one-time bonus. And then the last one you activate gives you like a unique endgame scoring thing. So that's its own thing. But it has this weird income action combo system So you have 3 tracks that are all next to each other in a line. So there's like your coin track, your worker track, and then your point track. And each of those has their own slider that you can move up. But then above them are columns of like 2 slots, to where you have these action tiles that you use to do things in the game. So you can get your income like as high as you want. You get those sliders like maxed out to where you can get potentially like 12 coin every round and 5 workers and then like 20 points. But you only get as much as you like unlock a column using an action for that round. So you have to get your income boosted, but you also have to take an equivalent number of actions to allow you to earn that income at the end. It's hard to like describe just in words. If you look at like the board, it makes more sense, especially as you play it. But it's just such a brilliant dynamic, because those tiles that allow you to earn the income, if you use enough of them, you flip those down and that's what becomes your link tiles in the game. So those are like triple use, basically. There's all these multi-use concepts in there. If you can't tell, I'm really excited about the game and I want to play it again, because it was magnificent. Nucleum, masterpiece. Nate, I'm still waiting for you to give this a try, because I think you'll like it. I'm not sure as much as me. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah,
but it is great.
I would be shocked if this does not hit the table for me in 2025, because I think at this point I now know 2 people who own it. So it's just a matter of making it happen, right? Because it is a beast. So
do it. Nate, just do it. Nike.
And it's Simone Luciani, who I highly appreciate the designs of his that I've played. Lorenzo Il Magnifico, one of my favorite games of all time. So I would definitely like to, even though I don't think this game is anything like Lorenzo Il Magnifico. But
I do want to point out that this does have an alternate name, which is Nucleum, but with a K. So
I don't think so. I'm guessing that's like a different language. Or is that actually an alternate name?
The rest are all like Chinese katakana characters, so...
Yeah, Nucleum Czech edition. That's the K.
Ah, okay. Perfect.
All right. Anyways, my number 1 is... it's one of those classic, modern, like one of those games, one of these modern classics that just struck gold with its design. And it's not even... The rule set is not that complicated. It's about a couple different things. It's about the player interaction on the board, and it's about the variable player powers, the different factions. This is a game that leans very heavily into different factions and playing to your faction's strengths to the extent, not quite to the extent that Root is, but close. And that if you don't play to your faction's strengths, your faction's proclivities, you will not win. So if that doesn't sound like your kind of game, then I would not advise you playing Terra Mystica, because that is what this game is all about. And it's so weird because there's a couple novel concepts in this game, and I won't dive into it too much. But in general, there's a lot of straightforward, simple concepts in it, and yet the design just absolutely enraptured me. I think a lot of it is player interaction, and for that reason, I have not and will not ever play this at 2 players. Minimum 3, 4 is also really good, and it's just so good. I mean, basically, you're using very, very limited resources to construct buildings out on a board. There's a lot of different terrain types, and different factions can build on different terrains for different costs. So that's interesting, as well as adjacency. You want to build next to people because it makes your buildings cheaper, but it also gives them a bonus if you build next to them, as well as, obviously, if you're close to people on the board, they might steal your spots, right? So there's kind of some give and take, and it also depends on what faction you're playing. Some people are better off on their own a little bit more, whereas other factions really benefit from being near to other players. There's some other things about the game. There's these kind of scoring goals / powers that you can draft at the beginning of each round. That's really interesting. It has scoring goals like Barrage, kind of, except that it doesn't punish you for not moving up on a track. But essentially, it's like, here's, for the 6 rounds or whatever, here's the scoring goal for each round. So like in round 5, you're going to be scoring all of your like little settlements. So like by the time you get to round 5, you want to have as many settlements out as possible. So It's such a fantastic game. It's got this classic vibe to it. It's incredibly ugly, but somehow charming and captivating at the same time. And I just love it. Terra Mystica. Haven't played it in a while now. I really want to play it again, but I've played it a solid 5 or 6 times and just loved it every time. So,
dang. Well, is this a 4X game?
No.
It is not. Okay.
It is not.
It looks like
game.
It would be, but I guess not.
Because of the map.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, just a bunch of ugly hexes. Yeah.
Sort of Catan colored too, actually.
Yeah, it's got a kind of a washed out vibe, but also it's got kind of this retro fantasy vibe to it, which I really like. So,
yeah. Okay, all right. I don't know. I feel like I'd be more interested in Gaia Project, just because I would probably get behind that theme a bit more. But I don't know.
It's funny. I haven't.
We'll have to see.
I haven't looked at Gaia Project too much, but I've heard notoriously it has really bad art.
Really?
That's what I've heard. I haven't really looked into it too much, but that's what I've heard.
It's rank 12 though on the Geek, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, higher than Terra Mystica, right? So
it was 31, I think, for that one.
Yeah, and Age of Innovation, which is like Terra Mystica 2nd Edition, is also probably very high. But I did not enjoy that one quite as much as Terra Mystica. It doesn't have the beauty and the simplicity that Terra Mystica has.
Sure. Wow, that's still 75. Man, 3 of the same game, basically.
It's
just different
basically
versions are in the top 100.
That tells you all you need to know, Cody. I mean, that tells you all you need to know. However, Cody, avoid it. I really would not recommend. I know you do this sometimes where you're like, this game's great, I'm going to buy it and only play it at 2 players and then sell it because it's trash. Okay. You do this with a lot of games. Don't do it with Terra Mystica, all right? Don't touch it unless you're playing with 3.
Really? Okay, that's necessary?
Apparently. I haven't played it at 2, but I think it really would be. Yeah.
Dude, Barrage, only play it at 3, let me tell you.
Yeah, man. Even though you never have.
Hey.
But I agree.
Oh, wait, then there's Terra Nova. There's also Terra Nova.
Ah, yes,
Dang it,
Terra
man.
Nova.
How many of these are there?
Terra Nova's like a simpler, it's like the Horizons of Spirit Island version of Terra Mystica. So
maybe I should get that one. Give it a try.
Yeah, maybe. Dip your toes. All right, well, that's plenty long enough, Cody.
Let me just say that I am disappointed that Barrage did not make your top 10 games of 2024.
Okay, I will tell you right now.
Yep.
My Barrage was my 13 for my top 10 of the year.
13.
So Vegetable Stock was 11. The Unmatched series was 12. Barrage, after one play, was 13 on the year, not of all time, but still.
Yeah, sure.
And like I said, I would really like to table it again at 3 players.
Well, again, if you liked components of Barrage, you got to play Nucleum. Barrage is still more pure in its like energy production system. Nucleum just uses that as a component, but yeah, Nucleum faux show, homie.
I think it will happen sometime in the next 12 months, and we will be talking about it most likely this time next year.
I expect it. If not, demand it.
And that was 2024.
And remember, spontaneously buying a board game which is on sale definitely means you saved money.
You save money compared to what? Not buying a board game?
Well, I mean, if you were going to buy that game at some point and then you bought it now on sale, yeah, you save money.
So patience is a virtue. Self-control.
It is. Well, I guess so, except for the point where then you just spontaneously buy a game because it's on sale.
Yeah, it's true. Spontaneity is nothing if not the antithesis of self-control.
When patience meets compulsion, that is the key.